to also recognize the sacrifice many Christians have made over the past year. For many months, you have been unable to come together for worship and prayer as you would normally do. I know that has been a huge burden for many Christians, but it is a burden you have borne with selfless stoicism, without complaint, and by adapting to online worship and meetings. He writes a bit more, and some of the other leaders have also written a few things as well. So I'll see if we can get this out to people. I'm sure you would like to read it. Anyway, thanks, Derek, for bringing it to our attention. Well, today, what is it? We've already been told it is Palm Sunday. And I do like to be able to celebrate the Christian big days, I suppose, in the calendar. Palm Sunday is one. Good Friday is another. And, of course, the day that Jesus rose from the dead, resurrection. I like to celebrate Christmas, although Christmas was certainly probably nowhere near the 25th of December. But it doesn't matter. It's good to be able to celebrate the fact that Jesus came as a baby to this earth. It's good. It's good. Right. Okay. I think we're still okay, are we? Okay, that's good. I'll carry on then. I can see a bit of a hassle at the back. Yes.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, well, that may not be a bad thing. Okay. I will continue now. Then that's good. Yeah. Of course, one thing I've come across this year that perhaps I haven't fully realized was that Palm Sunday is not necessarily the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem. If we have a look at if we follow the Jewish calendar, it would have in fact been the 10th day of Nisan. And I want to go back to what we're sort of following at the moment, and that's the children of Israel's journey out of Egypt and into the wilderness to eventually go to the promised land. So I want to first of all look at Exodus chapter 12. If there were loads of people and we were back to normal in the church, I'd get people to read these scriptures so that others could participate in the service a bit more than me. But I'm afraid for the day you're going to have to put up with my voice. So Exodus chapter 12 and verses 1 to 14 I'm going to read first of all. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb." Now, the part of what we've got to at the moment, of course, is that the Lord is about to take out of Egypt the children of Israel. The Egyptians have experienced 9 plagues. You would have thought that would have been enough for Pharaoh to have let them go, but no. And now God has promised them that this last plague, they will be able to go. But they need to prepare for it first of all. So I'll go back to verse 3. It says, "Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household." And it was on the 10th day of Nisan that Jesus rode into Jerusalem. Pretty significant, isn't that? the Lamb of God, was chosen to be our sacrifice. And on the 10th day of Nisan, the children of Israel were to choose a lamb. Why? We'll read on. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you may take them from the sheep or goat. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the people of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. That same night, they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Do not eat the meat raw or cooked in water, but roast it over the fire, head, legs, and inner parts. Do not leave any of it until morning. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is the day you are to commemorate. For the generations to come, you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, an everlasting ordinance. And as I said, that was the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem, the 10th day of Nisan. Well, the plague came. The firstborn was struck down. And I want to move on now to Exodus 12 and verse 31. There had been great mourning, of course, during that night. And then 31, it says, during the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up, leave my people, you and the Israelites, go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go, and also bless me. The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise, they said, we will all die. So the people took their dough before the yeast was added and carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs, wrapping it in clothing. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and they gave them what they asked for, so they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, where they were about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, as well as a large drove of livestock, both flocks and herds. With the dough they had brought from Egypt, they baked cakes of unleavened bread. The dough was without yeast because they had been driven out of Egypt and did not have time to prepare food for themselves. They went out of Egypt. Can you imagine what the Israelites must have felt like? Yes, they've been in slavery for 430 years. All right, there was nobody there who'd been there for 430 years, but they'd had to endure the slavery. They'd had to endure the beatings. They'd had to make these bricks for the Egyptians in the searing heat. It was an awful existence. And now they were free. They were told that they were going going to the promised land. You know, oh, we're off, folks. We're off to the promised land. You know, we're all off to the promised land. La la la. Yeah, it was great news for the Egyptians, for the Israelites. All right, now let's move on to the occasion of Palm Sunday. At least we'll still call it Palm Sunday, because that's what we're celebrating today. And I want to read Luke chapter 19. I'm going to read from verse 29. Luke 19 from verse 29. This is the triumphant entry into Jerusalem. As Jesus approached Bethphage and Bethany at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt there tied, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' tell him the Lord needs it." Those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." They brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. As he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. When he came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace on earth and glory in the highest." The people were praising God. The people were rejoicing. Was Jesus going to be their Savior? Was he going to be the promised one that they felt was going to get rid of the Romans? Yes, probably he was. Some had seen the miracles that he'd performed. Others perhaps had been fed by him round the Sea of Galilee. Don't forget, it was Passover time. There were literally thousands of people that would not normally been in Jerusalem at the time. It was a very crowded place. The disciples perhaps were elated as well, thinking, yes, everyone at last is going to recognize that Jesus is going to be our King. And then, of course, it all goes pear-shaped. Of course, Jesus knew when he was riding into Jerusalem that it was going to go pear-shaped. He was ready for that. If we read just a little bit further, I'm going to read from verse 39, which is where I left off in that chapter of 19. From verse 39, I'll go down to verse 44. So some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. I'm going to pause there. I've been to Jerusalem. I've been down the hill. There is a church there which I think is supposed to be the place where Jesus wept. I don't expect for 1 minute it was. But I went in the church. And there in the church, through the window, is the cross. And in the distance, on the hillside, there's the Temple Mount with the worship of Muhammad, of course, the Muslims. And you can imagine Jesus weeping. But of course, he wept over Jerusalem for this reason. He wept over it and said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. And of course, that was the real reason that Jesus wept. He was there to save them, but they rejected him. And of course, on Good Friday, Jesus was crucified, and their elation of Palm Sunday went to pot. And the question is really that I want to ask you, how do we cope with the highs and lows of life? Because they do come along, don't they? You know, one day we can be up, and the next day we have a setback, and we have a problem. I think for the Israelites, most of their problem was a total lack of trust in God. I had a problem myself this week, just a short testimony, and I think it was because I was preaching this Sunday. I like to sort of get well prepared to preach, and but I do really want to know what the Lord wants me to preach on. It's important. And so sort of about 3 weeks ago,
We can't hear you, Richard.
Battery's gone.
okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Can hear me. Okay, that's good. I hope. When I get to. Oh yes, I had a problem, didn't I? Yes, about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So I started to sort of prepare for it and reading the scriptures and Lord, you know, what do you want me to bring? What do you want me to bring? And the only thing that I got was the ups and downs of the Christian life. I wanted to relate it to Palm Sunday and the teachings through the wilderness that we've been doing. But I wasn't sure whether that was right. And come last Saturday, I had a bit of a sleepless night because I'm thinking, well, once Stephen has finished his preach last Sunday, I'm up next, and I really haven't got anything except for this title. Is it right? Anyway, Saturday night went through, bad night. Sunday night went through, another bad night. Monday night went through, another bad night. Tuesday comes round. I had a quick word with George on this and explained the situation to him. Anyway, Tuesday night came round, another bad night. Oh my goodness. You know, what am I going to do? I'm going to sort of cancel Wednesday evening, I think. I'm not having Wednesday evening. I'm not going to be able to cope. Do you know, I need something. Anyway, Wednesday went, and I was fine on Wednesday. I thought, I don't feel that tired, even though I was only getting sort of 4, 5 or 6 hours sleep, which is not good for me. I like a lot more than that. And when it got to the evening, we were chatting away, and Harry was talking about the wilderness experiences, and he said, really, it's all about the ups and downs of the sort of the Christian life and how to cope with it. And I felt, yes, thank you, Lord. That is the subject you want me to sort of talk about. And I went to bed a very sort of happy man, if you like. And I went to bed sort of thinking, yeah, I'm going to trust the Lord. He's going to show me. He's going to show me. So I'm hoping what I've got for you is directly from the Lord. I believe it is. I believe it is. So what was the problem then? It was a lack of trust that I think partly what the Israelites had. Why did they have a lack of trust? Well, let's turn first of all to Exodus chapter 13 and verse 17, verse 17. Exodus chapter 13 and verse 17. Remember now, they've just come out of Egypt. They've taken all the wealth that Egypt could give them. And they're heading for the promised land. Yes, we're going to be there. Well, it may take a week or so. Don't know how long it'll take, but it won't take too long to get there. 17 comes in. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, although it was the shorter. For God said if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road towards the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt, armed for battle. Some of them might have got a bit impatient. We like things to be done straight away. Are we all right there? Okay, are we? Okay. Sorry about that. I sometimes see a sort of panic in front of me, and I just wonder whether there is a technical hitch. But hopefully we're okay. So sometimes we get impatient, don't we? You know, we want things to happen straight away, but they don't. And for the Israelites, they may have thought, well, we'll be in the promised land in a few days' time. But perhaps not. God didn't take them the shortest route. He led them down towards the Red Sea because he needed to prepare them first to be an army. And had they met with the Philistines, they would have been defeated. Another problem that we can face is fear. If we have a look at Exodus chapter 14, I'm going to read verses 10 to 13. As we've already seen that God didn't lead the Israelites around the Philistine country, but he took them down down to the Red Sea or whatever sea.
Well, we seem to have lost both sound and vision. So I think we'll just wait 2 minutes, and then if we haven't heard back, we will move on. While you're waiting, if you haven't got your communion ready, your bread and your wine, now is a good time to get it ready. But here they come back actually, so should be able to resume in shortly. Richard, we can see you, but you're muted. Barry, can you unmute so that we can hear Richard? We can see you, but can't hear you because you're muted.
How far back was I muted?
That's good. All right.
Okay. Well, I've just read, I don't know how far we got there, but I've just read Exodus 14 and verses 10 to 13. The second problem that the Israelites may have had was fear. And they were fearful because they got to the Red Sea. The Egyptians were behind them and about to bring them back. What were they to do? What were they to do? Well, of course, we know what did happen. Let's have a read of it. Again, verses 31 through to, I think it's just read verse 31. We'll start from verse 29 from 14. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. And of course, when that happened, when they got back to the other side and they saw the Egyptians lying dead on the floor, there was elation again. They were pleased, they were happy, they were joyful. And we have in chapter 15 of Exodus, the song of Moses and Miriam. And everything was absolutely fine again, wasn't it? There was no problems. We're off on our journey now. We can continue to get to the promised land. But then, once again, it goes a bit pear-shaped. And this time they start to complain to God. They've already perhaps been impatient. They've been fearful. And now they start to complain to God. Verse 22 of chapter 15 says, Then Moses led Israel down from the Red Sea and went down into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, What are we to drink? Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. He said, If you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. I thought what Danny brought in his talk regarding this was very interesting. I must look at that a bit further, but there was minerals in that water that would have cleansed the Israelites from some of their diseases, and I think that's an interesting fact. I hadn't come across that before. I must look into that to, The Israelites were very quick to complain. And so too we are sometimes, aren't we? Very easily do we start to complain. So there's a lesson there for us. What have we got to complain about? And perhaps some of you were thinking, well, this has been a lousy year for us, hasn't it? Blooming COVID-19. Nothing to thank for God for that. I mean, Jill and I were going out on a couple of holidays, at least abroad last year. That never happened. We're members of the Surrey Cricket Club. Cost us £200 each, just over. We never saw a ball bowled. And all I got back from them was a small refund. How fair is that? Jeremy was coming over twice last year. Never saw him once. Couldn't give him a hug. How fair is that? Haven't really been able to see our granddaughter very much. We did go for walks with her once or twice. Social distancing, of course. No hugs. That isn't fair. It's really been quite a miserable year, quite frankly, and I'm sick to death with it. Not able to come to church properly either. Meet with friends. Missed our coffees in the hall. I wonder if you have too. I have. Really? It's been a lousy year, or has it? Or has it? Let's look on the good side. And all right, I'm perhaps being a little bit flippant. Because I haven't been on holiday, my bank account's looking quite good. So that's a positive, isn't it, eh? Jeremy, all right, he hasn't come over, but there's been quite a closeness because of Skype. We've been on Skype together quite a lot, and there's been quite a good relationship with us. You won't believe this, but one day, and it was only about a month ago, Jeremy and I were on Skype for 15 minutes short of 6 hours. Yeah. But you say, well, what you got to talk about? Well, if you meet up with a friend for the day, you chat all the time, don't you? Well, that was just like Jeremy and I. We met up on Skype and we had a good time together, just chatting things over. All right, no, we haven't seen our granddaughter, which has been a bit of a pain. But I've learned new skills with her on drawing. We found a website we could do drawings together. That's been good fun. All right, the church hasn't met, not physically here. But you know, I think it's got closer together. There've been a lot more midweek activities. All right, they've been on Zoom. But you know, there's been a closeness and I think more of a unity. So there are positives. Let's look at the positives, not always complain. God's got a purpose in this, I'm sure. We need to trust him. And lastly, the Israelites turned away from God, didn't they? They started to worship a golden calf. Aaron said it came out of the fire when he threw their gold earrings in the fire. Well, I don't think Moses really believed him when he said that. And in fact, if you look at, let me see, if we look at chapter 32 of Exodus, chapter 32 of Exodus and verse 1. I've got time to read it. Probably not. So we will read it. It says, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Aaron answered them, take off your gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. So all your people took off their gold earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they had handed him and made it into an idol, cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. How sad. From someone that you would have expected to have done better, that one of the leaders of the children of Israel had helped the children of Israel to start worshipping gods. And of course, when Moses did come down from the mountain, the children of Israel paid dearly for that mistake. And you know, I believe that will happen to us if we lose our trust in God, and if we start putting other gods in place of him. How can we do that? Well, let's make sure that lower our standards that God has. Let's make sure we don't start to neglect him. Let's make sure that we don't stop reading his word and having our quiet times. Let's make sure that we don't start watching things on TV that are not really wholesome. Perhaps even refusing, perhaps, to admit that we're wrong sometimes when we've said things that are a bit hurtful. Sometimes I can say things as a bit of a joke. Ha, that was funny, wasn't it? And the Lord said to me, no, that wasn't funny at all. And I need to come to that person and say, look, John, I was sorry I said that. That was hurtful. Sorry for that. You know, whatever we put in front of God becomes an idol. We need to get rid of our idols and destroy them, or at least put it in its right place. It may be that our computer has become an idol. I'm not saying you should destroy it. Just put it in its right place. You know, perhaps we're spending too long on the computer. Perhaps we're playing another game on it, when really we haven't actually had our quiet time yet. Perhaps we're watching TV or doing something. Let's make sure that we put God in his right place. You know, many of our problems we face in our lives boils down to a lack of trust in God. Israel's problem was just that, as well as worshipping the idol, of course. But their main problem, I think, was that they lacked trust in their God. And sadly, it resulted in none of them, except two, seeing the promised land. Can you imagine? I don't know how far into their journeyings when they got to the promised land, and you remember the 12 spies who went into the promised land to see what it was like, and they came back. 10 of them came back they all came back with good reports to an extent. Oh, the land's great, you know, look at all the grapes and it's fantastic. It really is fertile. Be wonderful, except for one thing. There's some big people there. We'll never beat them. And they were afraid, except for two, Joshua and Caleb. He said, look, if we trust God, it'll be all right. But they didn't. And because they didn't trust God, they ended up wandering in the desert for another 40 years. How sad. How sad. Let me finish then by asking you the question, are you in a wilderness at present? It may not necessarily be a bad thing. It may be that God has things he wants to teach us. And as you and I journey together through it, let's make sure we don't miss out on the good things that God has for us. If we trust him and keep our eyes fixed on him, then he will take us over to the promised land. Or at least he will take us over across the desert to the other side, to where he has in plan and in store for us. Thank you very much.